I own a Bambu Lab H2D printer, and if you have one or any other high quality printer, you know how great they are. Awesome printers. I decided to get the 10-watt laser option for my printer, and after trying to use it, I came to a little snafu moment. In this video, I will explain what happened and how I came to the conclusion that I needed something else and decided to get an XTool S1 to complete my setup with the H2D. Let's get to it. I got my first printer about 10-15 years ago, and the first printer I got was an Anet A8. Yes, this one. At the time, they were really basic, and I was spending most of that time just modifying the printer to make it better, printing parts to actually improve the 3D printer. Modern 3D printers don't need you to change anything on the printer, and they work pretty much out of the box. The quality of the printer, the software, the slicer make it really easy to use, and they are simply awesome. You can do so many things with it. The Bambu Lab printer arrived on the market and they changed everything. It's now easy, reliable, fast to be able to print whatever you want with the machine, the slicer, and the software around it. I started to get an X1C a few years ago, and now since a couple of years, I've got an H2D with the laser 10-watt option. I decided to get the laser option simply because I wanted to be able to engrave and cut nice things, but the main objective for me was actually try to replace large parts that I used to print in plastic, flat surfaces or anything like that, maybe with some acrylic or wood from the laser cutting. The concept is really simple: to be able to try to replace large surfaces with something else, as large surfaces in a 3D printer are slow to print, they use a lot of plastic, and they also tend to warp quite a bit. And I had major issue with some of my parts in the past and wanted to go in a different way to be able to combine a 3D printer with a laser cutting part. The first time I used the laser option on the H2D, I had absolutely no ideas what laser engraving or laser cutting was. I really quickly find out that, like every other process, it's a process, and therefore you need to learn how the system works. One of the things that you need to understand with laser cutting or laser engraving is that it pretty much burns the material away from your part. So if you have a piece of plastic, a piece of wood, it will actually burn through the material to engrave or either cut. This makes the process slightly different than 3D printing because the influence of the material is way higher than 3D printing. Today with the Bambu Lab software, you just say, I want to have PLA, and it's just making a part really quickly. You have to pretty much change nothing in the settings, and you get a part pretty much straight away. On the laser cutting or laser engraving, the material change is way higher, and you need to change a few things in the settings regularly to be able to compensate that. When I started to cut my first part or engrave the first part, engraving is not too much of a problem because you actually burn only a little amount of material. Cutting, however, is a different story. It really cuts and really burns the material through. And when you burn a material, no matter which one it is, wood, plastic, metal, or anything like that, it actually produces two things: smoke and, of course, emissions. In emissions, can be in form of gases, but also particles that are ejected from the process and goes everywhere in your machine. At the beginning, the first time I used it, I didn't attach the extraction tube to the window, and I filled really quickly my apartment with smoke. So I had to stop really quickly the burning process. I also realized that by cutting materials in the H2D, it actually creates a lot of smokes and a lot of particles, and these particles tend to stick pretty much everywhere in the printer. It's not major, But if you're using a high accuracy 3D printer and you suddenly produce a lot of particles, well, somewhere these particles are going to get stuck in linear rails, in your extruder, or anything like that, and they may block or even damage your machine. Also, the H2D, like most of the Bambu Lab, has a carbon filter at the back to try to remove the fumes when you're actually 3D printing materials. And these carbon filters are also getting filled really quickly with the fumes and the particle from your cutting process. It's not major. Most of the people don't have a problem with that. I do have a problem with that because I hate cleaning my machine. I decided to go to a laser cutter dedicated machine. And after some research, I discovered the XTool S1. I went for the 20-watt module, which for me seems to be a good compromise between the laser diameter and the power cutting of the machine. The 40 watts can cut more, but has a higher diameter. The 10 watt has a smaller diameter for more detail in engraving, but seems to be cutting less. So I decided to go with the 20 watts. I decided to get the XTool S1 as a bundle with pretty much everything. I've got the honeycomb plate, I've got the rotary engraving, the height extension, the fire extinguisher, pretty much everything you can find. XTool made some really good offer over the 4th of July. I could not pass the opportunity and decided to get one. When I received the machine, it's pretty much already put together. There's really little things to do. The only thing I had to do was actually build the extension and get everything sorted with the cables, tubing, the extinguisher. And in the bottle, there's also the filter system AP2. If you're looking at getting a laser cutter or engraver, one thing you really have to look for is a good filtering system. Even if you have an extraction on the outside, it's still pushing all the fumes, particles, smoke, everything outside. And if you're living like me in an apartment, your neighbors may not be super happy about it. And it also tends to stink in your apartment. So nothing really great. The AP2 is actually life-saving. It removes the smoke, emissions, particles. The AP2 has large filters in the machine that allows you to run the machine for a long time without having to change the filter all the time. Also, the AP2 is directly connected with the S1 through a USB dongle or Wi-Fi and allows you to run the system automatically. As soon as the machine starts, the AP2 will start, removing all the smokes and everything that you have, and it works absolutely perfectly. I run this in my apartment, and there is absolutely no smell or anything in my apartment coming out of the AP2. I can only recommend it. After using the S1 for a few weeks, the machine is great. Everything they say on the internet is actually true. And I'm not going to make a video here to show how to set it up, packing out. If there's plenty of videos around, I don't need to do that. And I can also tell you that pretty much everything we see on the internet good about this machine is actually true. It's an amazing machine. It might not be the most sophisticated machine. It hasn't got a camera inside, but it is a workhorse. If you need something stable that you can use all the time and you're pretty sure that it's going to work, this is a machine for you. However, I found two little things that I need to point out, which I'm not too super happy about it. Nothing major, don't worry. The first one is the honeycomb plate. The honeycomb plate doesn't fit in one section. It's not fixed position into the machine. It can move around in the machine. And it is a bit annoying because as it moves, it can not align with the axis. So when you put your material that you want to cut or anything like that, you spend quite a bit of time trying to align the side of, for example, the sheets that you want to cut to the laser X and Y axis. So it can be time consuming to do that. It would have been nice if the honeycomb was just sitting in one place, and you can use the side of the honeycomb to actually lock in place your part to have all the time the same position. The second aspect is that there's some little calibration to do. There's two calibration that I was doing. The scaff, I hope I'm saying it right, and this is required to compensate the size of the cut of your laser. You can imagine that when you cut like with a saw, you actually remove a width of material from your plate or whatever you're cutting. Therefore, to have the correct size of the material or the part that you want to cut, you need to offset that. The second aspect is that I realized that like every machine, it has production tolerances. And in my case, I realized that if I ask the head to move 100 millimeters, well, it's not exactly moving 100 millimeters. It's a little bit less. So when you actually do parts which needs to fit something else, for example, in my case, part that I do on the 3D printer and part that I do on the laser cutter, they need to come together and they need to be dimensional accurate. And this was not the case. So this is a two calibration that I need to do, or I needed to do, to be able to compensate this aspect to have dimension accurate parts. Overall, I am absolutely ecstatic about this machine. I think it's a great extension to the capability of the H2D. I wish I didn't buy the laser, but it was a massive learning curve. If you have an H2D without the laser and you want to go that way, I definitely recommend something dedicated for it, like the XTool S1. I will be doing in further videos explanation on how to set up the scaff, the dimension compensation, but also how to make a positioning system for the honeycomb to be able to put it in the right position so you don't have to move the little part all the time and get the position right. Thank you for watching, and remember, snafu, but learning.